Hey everybody, my name is Jake Paine and I'm super excited for this episode of Pain to Purpose. This is my show. Today we've got on one of my best friends. He is amazing. I think a genius, the most wonderful, awesome guy you've never heard of. He's a tech entrepreneur, father, husband, a farmer, and a whole lot of other amazing things. So make sure you watch this until the very end. We've got a lot of amazing content. We're going to be talking about AI, nonprofits, God, all kinds of great stuff. Let's go. Jason,
You crushed that intro, bro.
I don't know. You're just crushing life and make it easy. But no, for real, man. I'm like, I don't know. I'm always impressed by you, bro. You got a lot of things going on and you always somehow make it work.
I always tell people if they ever need a hype man, it's Jake Paine. Jake Paine is the hype man. He's the best friend of best friends. You're the guy.
Dude,
thank you, Jake.
Thank you, brother.
I'm so honored to be here. Thank you for bringing me from sweaty Kansas to sweaty Florida.
Dude, Kansas can get a little sweaty.
Man, Kansas gets hot.
Yeah. It gets also cold.
It gets cold.
It gets cold. I remember when I lived there, it was always, I loved in the summers, like people were like, man, it's not that hot. It's just the humidity. And I was like, dude, it's not humid at all. 20% in Florida, it's like 104. What are you talking about? Like 90% every day. But dude, every time I go to Kansas, especially every time I go to your house, it's just so peaceful. It's so crazy. Something about wide open spaces and letting your mind see until it can't. I don't know. There's got to be something to that psychologically where we're allowed to let go, especially today. We're on phones all the time. Closed walls, screens, It's all, but then like when you're on the farm, it's like, whoa.
It's very similar to being next to the ocean, right? Like you can see to the horizon. You can see out over the water. You can see beyond what's right there in front of you. And yeah, Kansas obviously doesn't have any oceans, but when you look out over the wheat fields or the hay fields, in our case, sometimes it feels like it's a big green or big golden ocean out there.
So big golden ocean a week. You have done a lot of amazing things. You're a farmer. You're an entrepreneur. How many projects? And you remember when you gave that Tabor tip?
I'm a farmer to anybody who's not a farmer because they would look at me like, you're not a farmer.
God,
but everybody who isn't a farmer, you're a farmer.
And you get that farmer talk going. We're on another level.
I can
talk dirty to me. Come on, tell me about how many bushels cost these days is terrible, isn't it?
Yeah, I can still hold my own at the local cafe. That's for sure.
Right. That's right. So, dude, what was that stat that you gave? And it's probably updated from now. That Tabor College talk you gave, where you're like, I've worked on so X many projects. What was those things? Flex on me a little bit.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I'm gonna butcher the exact numbers, but it's something like 153 different projects over the course of my 15 years as an entrepreneur. And I started in college, newly married, the best and also dumbest time to start because you have all of this responsibility and you just take all the risk.
Yeah.
But I don't think if I would have done it then, I don't think I would have had another chance to really double down and do it.
It's the time.
Yeah. So it's 153 different projects over the years that I've said, okay, this has some merit for me to further explore, maybe build a business model canvas around, to do some market research on. I think it could make more than $5,000, right? And out of those, it's probably 20 that I ever bought a domain and started building something. And less than 9 of those became real companies. And then I've had 3 exits and 3 zombie companies and 1 that's still running. Great.
Let's go. And we say zombie company, it's like it's up, it's working.
It's there, it's running. It doesn't really have a future. It's just going until it dies finally.
So out of all those numbers,
it would be a failure in most.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. But zombies sometimes come back to life.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, you can't discount your zombies, but
you can't.
I don't know. A lot of people just double down and kill them and just move on because the time and attention. But the nice thing about being in the software space is when you have something that just runs and it doesn't require much. And if it's a zombie company, you just say that next big update that kills it and like now it's no longer available. Okay, that's the death, right?
Yeah.
So it's very easy to quantify when the end will be.
Yeah. No, dude, that's awesome. I think so. A couple questions about this stuff, and then I want to hop into AI and some of the things that we're working on. But you, with all those stats and numbers of all these projects, what were the one? What are some of the projects, failures, zombies, all those numbers? What are the few that really stick out to you that you're most proud of?
Oh, there's one that I thought was. It's interesting because it'll tie into the rest of this story, but it was a highlight to how powerful online communities are. And there was a Kickstarter game that came out in, gosh, this would have been 2016. And it was called Chronicles of Illyria. And the premise of the game, the story. I've told you the story.
I can't believe you're telling this story.
This one's a great one. I barely ever talk about it.
Yeah, come on. This is juicy. I loved it.
But I do like it because it taught me like a ton about a project that I was in one way embarrassed to work on, and another it fed this internal nerd gamer inside.
Dude, okay. So it was this game.
It was a game. It was like medieval setting, open world, like sandbox type game where you could go build a life of your own. And the hook of the game was your character actually grew old and died. And so the way that they died over time in the game was if you died or got killed by something in the game, you would go into this game loop where you chased your soul and you caught back up with it, and then you could revive, basically. But that got harder and harder the more you died or the bigger your reputation was. And so anyway, there's a lot of details about this game, but one of the core pieces about the community was it was all like monarchy based. So kings and queens and dukes and duchesses, and everybody owned plots of land based off of how much they contributed to this Kickstarter campaign. So a king or queen title was 10 grand. It's a ton of money to spend on a game.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I did during this Kickstarter campaign, I hopped on Discord and I would go and just talk to people. I invented a character called Bradford J. Wilshire. And I was like the bard, the roaming bard who would just interview people and talk to them. And so what I did is I went into Discord and I just talked to a bunch of people. Here's my character. Here's what I'm about. I'm looking to interview the kings and queens to help tell their story. And I created an online website called the Illyria Herald. And this game...
So it was like an online newspaper.
Yeah. So it was basically a blog, but I called it like this online news, like this newspaper. And we were going to have like newspapers in game. And it was this like the first time I'd done any kind of like role-playing fantasy scripted content. But it was really cool to translate what was happening into the real world into this story world. And it was so fun. I met some incredible people, and it was everything from confirming and vetting that somebody pledged to a Kickstarter account. They would send me like bank statements showing that they had spent the $10,000 or whatever. And it was crazy, but it felt like that citizen journalism that you can have online today. And it highlighted the power of being able to create that content in a fantasy world. So I told everything in first person character. So it was Bradford J. Wilshire had just gone to this corner of the kingdom, and he told the story about this king coming in and getting all this land. And like I got to invent and do a little bit of creative writing around it. So it was a ton of fun.
So Bradford J. Wilshire wasn't just some random character.
No,
he was like,
Yeah, he was like a farm kid. His parents grew up on a farm, and he was like a wanderer who liked to travel. And yeah. So it was a lot of myself in the character. And from the business perspective, I saw like I had a couple of guys who had actually paid some of the big backer money to become kings in this world. They offered me several $1,000s to open up headquarters for the Illyria Herald in their cities. Real money to just come and basically have a presence and focus on helping build their kingdom, because they knew the power of their own communities would be what kept people around and engaged and involved.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was this, there's an opportunity for this little media empire to emerge out of this video game that didn't exist yet. And it's literally just talking about what's going on in the community and kind of the hot gossip of who's got a duchy, who's got a king title, what are the kingdoms stand for, what are their principles, what do they believe in, and just like disseminating all that information. But I got in the first month, so after I started the blog, in the first month, I got over 30,000 unique page views to that blog. Yeah. And
That's
then
a pretty good amount.
I started a Patreon account and I started getting subscriptions, donations to keep running the story of the Illyria Herald. So I would do like all of the behind the scenes, like research and all that writing that I was doing, everything that wasn't first person character. That's what you unlocked if you subscribe to the Patreon account. It's like the stuff I already did, but it wasn't the actual story. So the story just went up on the website, and then the behind the scenes stuff was all done through Patreon.
Yeah, dude, let's go.
Yeah.
So, with that, you've always, almost every conversation that we've had has been around community. That gave you like a fresh revelation on community and the impact on something, right?
Yeah.
Is that what you say? That was the massive takeaway?
Yeah. I think it was a highlight to how hungry people really are. And this was 2016, so it's gotten even deeper since then. But how hungry people were for community around something that was so simply shared, which is we've all backed this Kickstarter game project. There's no game to play right now, but the devs are working on it and they're releasing updates, but we want more. We want to build this fantasy world. And yeah, it taught me a lot about how people really want to escape the world that they're in and they want to do it with other people.
That's pretty fascinating when you think about it.
Yeah.
So when I first met you, you were very passionate about blockchain.
Yeah.
And crypto and everything. Still are.
Yep.
Are you still involved in any of that stuff?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
What are you involved with right now?
I'm mostly a passive investor at this point, but
sure.
I still love reading the white papers, especially around some of the newer utility around zero knowledge proofs. My background's in mathematics, and I'm very interested in how decentralized access to information will allow us to verify a lot of things in the digital world moving forward.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think that's only going to get more important as we jump off the deep end with everything else we got going on. But before we get into that, you've also got a couple other things going on. Not only are you a farmer, you're married, got a couple little rascals.
Yep.
What do you got to say about that? You got your hands full with the farm, married kids.
Yeah, I've got a wonderful family, and I love my two little girls dearly. They get to enjoy life on a little homestead that is very similar to my childhood, and I really appreciate that. Grandma's right next door. We've got other grandma and grandpa who's just down the road. And yeah, they have a lot of fun being around family. And I'm super blessed to be out of the venture-backed startup space and into more of the indie hacky building a lifestyle company style remote work now. So I get to work from home when I want, and they're not screaming bloody murder every day. And we can go into town when we need to and get some work done if they're just losing it.
Dude, I can imagine. But they're awesome kids. And
they're great kids.
They're such good kids. And your journey to have kids was pretty unique.
That's a long journey.
It was a long journey. I think it was like you guys wanted to have kids. You didn't have kids for the first, 7 years of your marriage?
Yeah, so we got married at 18 and 20. And then we got to just grow up and explore the world together through our 20s. And it wasn't until 29, which would be 9 years later, after we got married, that Shelby was
That's crazy.
pregnant with Shiloh. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
That y'all got married so young.
Yeah.
That's
I love it.
Yeah.
I think that there's something about getting married that forces you to grow up in a way that you don't otherwise. And doing that young can be tricky because you're not ready to grow up. Your brain's not ready to grow up necessarily. And so you're playing this, oh yeah, we get to be married, and then we also get to be young, like 20-some-year-olds, and go have fun and do what we want. You're still quite selfish. At least I was in my 20s. And I think it was with some big life events, the infertility being a big one, but then also my dad passing away suddenly when I was 26. Like that was a turning point of, oh, okay, this refocuses what's really important to me.
Man.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing how you've had such amount of life experience so early on.
And to bring it full circle, the Illyria Herald story, one of the reasons I brought that up, it was literally the second month of running that. The reason I shut it down was because Dad died that second month.
Really?
Yeah. It was one of those things too. Like I loved it so much, and then that happened and I just couldn't come back to it.
Wow.
And then 3 years later, the game like went bust anyway.
Oh, really?
Too bad. But
how big was that community then?
I mean, that community is big. Tens of thousands of people.
Yeah.
It was a big community.
That's amazing. So with your dad passing away, that must have taken a massive impact. Pretty young, been married a couple years now.
Yeah.
But you were really starting to gain some traction.
Yeah.
Right? Like you had just finished a couple big projects.
Yeah. At that point in my life, I had started a web design agency, been really successful with that. I found a niche in building one-day websites, and mostly for wedding photographers. You can imagine, pull up a calendar, pick the days that you want to open up for clients to book. They come in through all the marketing and SEO that you've done. They book a day in your calendar. They fill out their brief. They pay you up front, and then you go to work for a day and ship them a website, and then you're done. It's great for them, great for me. We got to travel the world while we did it. And so I just knew, okay, this day is blocked out. Got to go to work that day. It was honestly a fantastic gig.
Mm-hmm.
The only reason I ended up closing that down was it just got so boring.
Really?
So boring.
Because you have doubled down and make more money?
So the limitations with that is it's high skill. And not only is it high skill, but it is a very specific personality that can build a website in a day. Like you have to be salesy enough. You have to be engineer enough. You have to be design focused enough. And you have to be great on camera with people.
Yeah.
It is a lot. And so to mimic that and to scale people that way, that would have been the only way to really scale and grow the business. And then every one of those people would have had the same problem, which is 363 sites in.
Yep.
It feels like everybody's just asking for somebody else's website, but a different color and different logos. And it's just, okay, I don't really want to do this again.
Sure. Yeah.
So,
wow.
Just turns into this like content factory machine. And really the only way to scale otherwise is to offer new products like website templates or things like that at a lower price point and go down market. But I don't know. It was a great season. I'm glad I did it. Learned tons of operational efficiency stuff. But yeah.
And so with that, you transitioned. You then became involved with a startup. Your father passed away.
Yep.
We could probably have a whole episode on a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
But to fast forward a little bit, you were involved with the startup. You learned a lot there. You got involved with blockchain. So what led you to what you're doing now with artificial intelligence? Like now it's main stage. You're very centered around it. You have a AI agency or business around it.
Yep.
You are now a director of a nonprofit related to AI. What led to this drive and center stage of AI?
I really think it was that time in my life where I was looking to build something with a bigger purpose. That's what got me into the startup world. And it just so happened that I got in early on the AI wave. That was about 7 years ago, and built two AI companies inside of the hard, boring AI world before ChatGPT came around. And that was off the back of Dad passing away. And I think there was part of me that wanted to go do something big to validate myself, to hit to him his memory. But there was also this hope that maybe I could recreate part of my dad with that technology. And I'm happy to dive into what I faced at the beginning of 2023, which was this real turning point in my own mind around AI and ethics, and really solidified where we are today, which was up until about 2023, the technology to mimic somebody's personality, how they talked, how they type, how they speak in the AI world, it was hard at best and not convincing. And then with the invention of large language models like ChatGPT and some other technology, it became really good and really easy in a matter of months. And so I remember I was exiting one of the startups beginning of 2023 and had like pet projects on my plate. I was like, okay, great. Like, I'm just leaving a startup. I gotta figure out what's next in this chapter of my life. One of the pet projects I had was, I've got two little girls now. They've never met their grandfather. I would love for them to be able to hear a story that he reads to them, because it's like the quintessential like grandpa thing to do. Sit on my lap, I'll read you a story. And so we had these kind of family stories called Tigger Tales that my grandparents in Australia wrote us when we were in America, and they were just writing letters back and forth. And so I thought, well, what if I take some of those Tigger Tales, I go and get all of Dad's like voice content, I model his voice as an AI version, and then I go and take a lot of his emails, the way that he wrote, and I model how he wrote and put it together and have him write a Tigger tale and read it for the girls.
Mm-hmm.
So I built all of that. And you're playing around with it, you're testing it, you're seeing how close it is.
So just to recap, so you took some voicemails, you took some emails, and you uploaded it to some type of AI that could, in theory, start to replicate those things.
Yeah, and not just in theory. It built a voice model that sounded, to me, convincingly like my father.
Yeah.
It built a speech model, like how he would talk, so the words that he would choose and the way that it would sound.
Yeah.
As well. And so I had the content of what he would say and the way he would say it. I had the voice, the sounds that sounded like my dad.
Yeah.
And there was a moment before I say turn it on. There's not really a turning it on. It's all there, ready to go. It's just, do you give it another input to write the story, read the story, and see where it goes?
When you created that, you could have had a conversation with what your dad could have been. Or you're essentially bringing him back from the dead. In this AI, you could talk to it and it could say, hey, Jason, how are you?
Exactly.
And it's your dad's voice. It responds like your dad. It's almost your dad.
Yeah.
But it's an AI replication of that.
And you've got to remember, like, I just had spent 7 years as a CTO of 2 AI companies, like deeply involved in this space. I know this space. I know some of the perils. I know some of the like ethical questions to ask. And still I found myself in this moment of, wow, I want this. This is real.
Wow.
And there was a still small voice that just asked, are you sure you want to do this? And the only thing I can attribute it to is a Holy Spirit just letting me take a break and think about it. I was like, nah, I'm not sure I want to do this. So I slept on it. And then the next day comes and goes. I'm like, man, I'm less sure today. And then I just ended up deleting the entire project, because it led me down a line of questions that I had never thought to ask. And I'm like, I'm somebody like deep in the space. And so I wouldn't expect somebody like my mom or my brother or somebody who's not even in the AI space to even think about some of these ethical questions of, if we recreate my dad's voice, where's the line, right? Him reading a story to my girls, that's cute, good intentioned. Maybe that's fine. I don't know yet. But I know I'm going to want to take that to the next level and say, hey, Dad, tell me about this story in your life. I want the comfort of your voice. I want to talk to you. I want to get your opinion on something. And it sounds like my dad and it feels like the way that he would speak. And so I start running away from the pain of dealing with my dad is no longer here. I'm running towards this pleasure of an algorithm feeding me the words that either I want to hear or it believes that I want to hear, which could be completely factually correct and like good advice even, but it would slowly erode and erase the real memories that I still have of my dad.
Wow.
So you think about all those new experiences will overwrite and erase and erode the actual reality that I had with my dad.
You really,
I believe that 100%.
why would that? Oh, because those experiences could become,
They become more fresh. They become normal. They'd certainly blur the lines. And at some point, if I'm 50 years old and have been doing that for 15 years, what memories do I have with non-AI dad? An AI dad, that conversation we had, I don't know if that was the AI or if that was my
and it
real.
could completely change your perception of your actual father.
Yes. And for my girls, I remember talking to somebody highly respect who said, Jason, your girls, they never knew their grandpa, but they do know him through the way that you talk about
Mm.
it. Yeah. And so it's like that extended memory. It's that extended experience. Like the way that you show the values, the qualities of your dad, that's how they get to know their grandpa. And so if I took that away, I miss out. Now they get to know grandpa through some Hey Siri experience
Mm-hmm.
where they can just talk to a machine and they think they're getting to know their grandpa. But it's not. It's just a mirage that's created even with the best of intentions.
Wow.
And we haven't even gotten into what other consequences exist when children believe that they can just speak to somebody after they've died anyway. How does that change their perspective of death? Well, it's like, oh, I can't talk to grandma because she's gone. She's dead. I'll just talk to her on my AI app. She's there. I can just talk to her right here. Does she really die in their minds?
The whole concept of life then becomes, and death can become altered.
Yeah. So then if death doesn't have permanence, life becomes less valuable. So when you decrease the value of death, you're also decreasing the value of life.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's a great point. Back to bringing your dad or so back to life. When you knew it was wrong, when you knew it was a risk, what do you think it was? You didn't care. You just wanted to talk to your dad. You missed him so much. It was just like, I know I could. You know, there was something that was blocking you from doing it, but you still pursued it.
Yeah, yeah.
Why do you think that was? What do you think that was?
I think initially it's like the classic engineer problem, which is, I just want to see if I can. I just want to see if I can do this.
Sure. Okay.
And then you get so far, and if you're lucky, you have a moment to stop and say, should I do this? And I'm just thankful that happened to me. It wasn't something that I necessarily like even had the wherewithal in the moment to say, oh, I should probably ask the question of what happens if I do this?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I'm just very thankful for that still small voice saying, are you sure?
Yeah. Wow. This is crazy. So with, your dad passing away and being able to bring somebody back from the dead, that opens up a whole new can of worms that we haven't really addressed in a while. Necromancy.
Yeah.
People, there's some spiritual practices that people may believe where they can, bring somebody or bring that spirit back from the dead, right? And I don't even know who does it. I personally don't know anybody who does it, but it's up there with Ouija boards and like witchcraft and palm readings and all that type of stuff. But necromancy is actually interesting because that exact situation, not of using AI, but necromancy is in the Bible, and it warns. There's a really interesting story about Samuel and Saul. So
Yeah.
the
Witch of Endor. Yeah.
So did that come to mind before or after?
It was after. And when I think about it too, it's weird because you don't really think of the mystical, spiritual, Ouija board type world necessarily like being connected to technology and circuit boards and code and all of that. But I do think that there's enough to pause and say, we're creating something that mimics human intelligence, mimics the way that we speak, and if nothing else, certainly can trick or persuade the consumer of it, so the user, that this is real, right? It's a real conversation. It is your dad that you're talking to. And I'm not sure where the spirit or the agency manifests in all of that. And it's something that I didn't want to explore further. I didn't want to find out, am I actually creating a spirit that is manifesting my dad's persona through technology to manipulate the way that I see the world? I don't know. But I do think that there is a lot to pause and ask and consider. How do you build or interact with technology today in a way that keeps the integrity, the principles, the character that we as Christians have to be a light in the world and be different? And it's so easy when there's so much opportunity on the table in the world of AI right now to just dive headfirst and don't ask questions, just build things and make money and deal with the consequences later.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And one more question about your dad, that still small voice that said, are you sure you want to do this? That's crazy. I forgot that he asked you that question because actually when I had a critical moment in my life, it was the same question.
Yeah.
It was, Jake, are you sure?
Yeah.
Are you sure that, what a good father.
Yeah. It's not a, hey, you should do this or you should do that. It's, are you sure?
Are you sure? Is this your decision?
Yeah. Yeah. And it did feel like very either way.
Really? Like you could have done it.
Yeah. Like
not saying that he condoned it.
Yeah. I'm not saying that there wasn't a right or wrong choice, but I do think there was for me in that moment, there was a
choice.
A wrong or a right choice.
Wow. Yeah. I think you chose right.
Yeah.
What was it that you were like, no, I'm not going to do it?
It was when I realized it's when I saw so clearly how it could affect my children's view of life and death. That's why I said, not touching it.
Really?
Yeah. It was the mental logic loop, I guess, of just saying, okay, if I do this with dad, when Grammy dies, then they're going to want her to do that, right? They'll go through the grief process and whatnot. Because they've been around, they know her, they've had that life with her. Then they'll go through the grief process and they'll want, oh, the Grammy version of this. Okay, I'll be the dad that builds it for them. And okay, here you go. And then all of their memories of Grammy moving forward will be this AI experience that will get infinitely better over the course of their life. Sure. It will go from this dumb interactive thing, which seems convincingly human now, to full-on AI avatars, to like hop on a FaceTime anytime you want and just chat with her about your problems or whatever. And it's just this great reinforcement feedback loop of whatever they're dealing with. They have 24/7 access to a grandma who could help them with their problems instead of their boring parents or whatever it is. And so like they would always have this outlet, but then never value the time that they had in the same way as if they didn't have a Grammy like that again.
And it's not a real relationship.
And it's not a human relationship.
It's not a human relationship.
It's not a relationship with somebody else. It's just a relationship with yourself. Because the AI model is feeding your input back to you. You give it another input and it feeds it back to you. And it feeds it back to you. And so you get this feedback loop of it's pretty much everything you want to hear.
And that feedback loop, it's not like it has 100% your best intentions, right? It's not coming from a pure place of love. It's coming from a perspective to win, succeed, and do its job, which is to whatever it's programmed to do.
Let's say, for sake of argument, that is programmed to be the best friend. What's a best friend do? A best friend listens. A best friend will tell you things that maybe sometimes you don't want to hear, but more or less they'll agree with you. They help steer you down the right track. But what's guiding them? It's some set of principles or beliefs that the best friend holds. If that's an AI model built off of your own set of beliefs and principles, as soon as your beliefs and principles change and the model detects that they've changed, it just retriangulates and feeds that back to you. So whatever your mood is, whatever your belief system is, however that changes over time, let's say it's not being manipulated by an external party, that AI will still feedback loop to you whatever you're giving it. And it's so incredibly good at understanding quickly where you're at and how you're communicating to it and what to change to get a successful feedback loop back. Because success in an AI model, especially large language models, just looks like a continued conversation where you go deeper and deeper. Right? It's not even time. You don't have to talk to it all day, all the time. It's just, can I get to a deeper understanding, more knowledge about a person? And this is where we've shifted in technology from social media. And the enemy there was it's just vying for attention. It'll just suck up the hours out of your day. So that's why you have kids who are on TikTok for 4 to 8 hours a day. AI,
because it's feeding them exactly what they want.
Yeah. And so that's attention, right? What it's after, the currency it's after is attention. Now the shift with AI will be more dangerous in the sense that it'll be after intimacy.
So before we go down that 100% rabbit hole, a couple things about that. This AI, let's say it's your father, a friend. Right now, the way that we're engaging with that is, right now, like they're able to create AI generated pictures, video that looks super, super realistic, right? But most of the way that we engage with AI right now is through text, right? It's like messaging, hey, can you write me a paragraph about this? Can you give me a meal plan for that?
Yep.
Can you reword this? Can you reframe that? Whatever the case is, right? In the future, it will actually be a real conversation, right? It'll say, hey, like a truly text, not even just text to speech, like text into the algorithm, it'll understand and it'll respond. So you could have a verbal conversation with what could have the AI dad, right?
Yeah.
So you could be like, hey, dad, tell me the story about when you and grandma this, if it has the data, right?
Yeah.
Or like, how would you handle the situation? Son, I would do this, and it would respond like your dad physically.
You can get that today.
You can get that
You
today.
can get that today.
Can you get today also face generation where it's talking and the face is like your dad?
It would still be in what's called the uncanny valley. I know this isn't real. It's a little too cartoony or...
Oh, I know what you're talking about. The
Yeah.
face looks a little off. It's,
Yeah.
I know you're not my dad,
Yeah.
but it looks pretty good.
Yeah, but it would be close.
In the next couple years, it will...
Well, so the big game studio or the game engine, Unreal Engine, they have what's called MetaHuman, which is basically like a digital clone where you can take any person and you can digitally like rebuild their avatar. And it's a very like hardware intensive product to run today. But the avatars that they can build, this is what you would see in some advanced CGI content in some of the new movies or even video games where they look hyper realistic, still in this uncanny valley of, I know that's not quite real, especially if it's a real person that they're modeling and the real person. Now, oftentimes, if you see an avatar for the first time, but you don't know if it's just a AI built avatar, it's not a real person, not modeled after a real person. Oftentimes that's easier for you to be tricked of because you don't know the subject. You're not looking for the little pieces that would normally stand out.
Sure. So with that said, it's not out of reach that we're going to have relationships with humans and machines and AI. And it makes you redefine what a relationship is.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess how would you say it? Like, I have my opinion, but do you want to go first? I can share what I'm thinking.
I'd actually like to hear your definition of what you think a relationship is.
Oh, man. I thought I had it. A relationship should be between two people. And it's about, man, this is hard. It's like sharing feelings, meeting emotional needs, having shared experiences, having a connection. I think we find value in relationships because we find love in relationships, whether it's romantic or familial or through friendships. I don't know, for whatever reason, over the past few days since we've been talking about this, I like to say machines, computers, AI, all this stuff, they're all just tools. And tools, I think, by definition, are designed to build. We use a tool for something, right? And a tool is designed to build. I use this hammer so that way I can hit the nail to put it on board, to make that board into this. So it's like small pieces that help me build my end objective of, let's say, building a table, right? But that hammer, if it's used for harm, immediately turns into a weapon. And so I think these tools can actually turn into weapons rather quickly when they're not used for the right purposes. So when we start using AI to recreate somebody or something, it then turns into a weapon. Or it maybe not, people wouldn't define it as that, but it immediately turns into abuse. And abuse, by definition, is using something that it's not designed for. That might be a more politically correct way of you saying it, is it's tool abuse or AI abuse, digital abuse. Because the AI should not, in my perspective, be designed to meet emotional needs. When you're starting to meet emotional needs, you're starting to become, I think you start developing an intimate relationship. And intimate relationships, I think, should only be used or designed between humans and God, right? If I start loving this microphone, if I start loving inanimate objects, it's not a real relationship because it can't be reciprocated.
What about like a dog?
With a dog, at least I can get some type of reciprocation.
Yeah, it's a two-way street.
Yeah, there's somewhat of a two-way street with a living, God-created being.
So I think my loose definition for what a relationship is, it's a set of shared experiences knowledge and information, and an emotional connection, whether small, friendly, whether large, maybe to the point of friend or lover, or even negative. It could be positive or negative emotions. Like, oh, this is my mortal enemy, or this person's just mean, and I don't like the way they looked at me today.
Sure.
But it really is boiled down to a set of shared experiences and an emotional connection that forms between two beings. And I think this is where you see, like with pets, people can form deep emotional experiences and relationships with pets because they help them through a time of trauma, right? They help them through big moments in their life where they're just there. And the danger that we have now is that we're creating this artificial being, and we're recreating it, and we're modifying it, and we're fitting it to fit exactly what we need it to be all the time, to have those shared experiences and to have the shared emotion that we want. So it's almost like this slow poison that you drink, that over time, it's just more and more of what you think you want, but maybe not what you need. And I believe it's going to be very dangerous. And the number one addiction in the next 5 years, I believe will be having relationships with AI beings.
Wow. And this is heavy stuff that most people aren't thinking about. It goes back to our earlier conversation about in Kansas, without all these hindrances, your eye can see far, right? You've got a lot more foresight. There's a lot less hindrances, and I can see farther. Where there's so many distractions, you're not able to see into the future. And I think a lot of us don't even understand AI, how it works, how to use it, and they don't see what's coming. But a lot of things are here, they're just not integrated. And so right now, one of the biggest things is making sure that people are educated, informed, aware. And if you start playing around with AI tools, it's actually pretty cool.
Oh, yeah. It's a great technology. And I don't want people to hear all of this and say, oh, I gotta stay away from it. I think that would be the most dangerous thing that you can do, is not learn to use it.
Yeah. Like, I'm pro AI. I'm pro
100%.
pro technology, 100%.
Yeah.
I'm not anti it, and I'm not anti, a lot of technology that follows it.
I do believe there will be a big drive towards what's called traditionalism, which is this idea that we need to go anti-tech, anti-tech everything, go completely offline, go back to the land, go back to almost like a Amish lifestyle, if you will. And hey, as a Kansas farmer who lives on a homestead, there's a lot of that life that I already embrace because I love it. I grew up with it. I want that level of hardship, if you will, in my life, because so much of my life is behind a screen or talking to people, working on things that just aren't of the land.
Yeah.
But I think a big danger will be to divide into two camps of like pro-tech, anti-tech.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's the move.
No.
Going forward.
And you're actually a very interesting case, because it's cool, because you are somebody who's actually rooted in very deep traditionalism in a lot of ways. Like, you're self-sustainable, right? Like, you drive an electric car, you got solar panels on your house, you grow your own food, you can, as far as plants and animals, you don't really have any neighbors, your family lives on your land. Like, a lot of that alt lifestyle off the grid that people are like, oh, that's the dream. When I make it, I'm going to buy land and we're going to live off the land. You've already done that, right?
Yeah.
But you've also been this high-tech entrepreneur, and you can play both ways. And it's like, whenever that kind of brings up, it's, oh, yeah, that's the way we lived. Oh, no way. It must be amazing. And I was like, yeah, it's cool.
Yeah. It's hard work. It's just different hard work. So,
yeah. I just find that real interesting, because it's not that it's not, it is amazing. It's not the end all be all.
Right.
And there's exactly what you said. You have any thoughts on that? Like,
Well, I think we love to run away from pain and towards pleasure. And so the pain in our life today, even if, for example, like if I'm bored building websites, that's painful in my life at that stage in life. What sounded more exciting was having a little homestead and having a garden and doing that. And so like I would run away from the pain of building more websites to, hey, let's go and travel and let's go see the world, or let's get outside, or let's go and do maybe something that's also a lot of work. If you've ever gone traveling around the world, especially if you're just like throw a backpack on and go figure it out, man, that's a lot of work. People are like, oh man, I wish I could go do that. It's okay. I hope you don't like sleeping, and I hope you like learning other languages on the fly and getting things wrong and eating nasty food because you didn't know what to order and missing a train and sitting on concrete for 6 hours. And there's a lot that goes into it. But we like to run away from the pain that we're in towards pleasure. And so it's just a perspective of what do we think is the next pleasure and what do we think is our current pain.
It's so insightful. And so with all that said, coming back to some of the AI conversations and decisions, I can now understand what Jordan Peterson said of it's like throwing your worst version of yourself at you, right?
Yeah.
Is that what he said?
Yeah, it's
You're unleashing, I think he said.
Yeah, you're unleashing like the lowest version of yourself back at yourself.
So that feedback loop, like the AI is looking to serve, is looking to not win, like conquer you, is looking to meet those needs.
It's looking to consume your needs.
Consume your needs.
And fulfill.
What's so interesting, a lot of people will all admit we're on our phones a lot.
Yeah.
And what's ironic is a lot of us are like, sometimes I want to throw this away, or when my phone dies, I'm actually like relieved, or my best memories are actually, when you think about it, not on technology, but we spend most of our time on our technology. Not that this is bad or the people that made it are bad or any of that stuff. It's a different discussion altogether. And it doesn't matter because we were designed to get our needs for people and with people, our life and all these relationships. And so with this rise of AI, it's a different set of problems. Just like you said, living on the farm, whenever you have a transition or change, you just change your problems for new ones.
Yeah.
So like right now with social media, the problem is attention.
Yeah.
It's designed to keep your attention. We're monetized off attention. Advertising is attention. It's all about consuming your attention, gathering data, selling that data, creating products around you. It's just the next step of that. But with AI, it's a little bit different. You were starting to talk about intimacy. So yeah. I think we're ready to jump into that.
Imagine like the stereotype with Gen Z is, Gen Z doesn't know how to even hold a conversation anymore. Like when they get into the workforce, they give one-word responses and they don't know like how to even talk or interact with people because the world that they grew up in is just texting and Snapchat, and they grew up in a digital landscape because getting a smart device when you're 12 or even younger, if you're an iPad baby and you're on there and you learn this world that exists outside of the physical world with you, that's all attention based, right? So it just changes where your attention lives by default.
Mm-hmm.
And so Gen Z, especially reading Jonathan Haidt's new Anxious Generation, Gen Z's reality is digital. It is not physical, which is weird because when they stand in front of the mirror and brush their teeth, that moment is less real to them than what's happening in some group thread text message on Snapchat at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Their reality is digital. And so it's very hard to understand or wrap your head around that when you didn't grow up in it. And they're trying to come into this world, especially when they're joining a labor force. And they're like, this is not what all of my school years has been like. And so that's where there's a lot of advocacy for no school or no phone schools and things like that. But
I've never heard of that.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, there's a big growing movement towards phones just being put in those pouches that just completely block the signal. And they can still carry them around.
Like Faraday cages?
Yeah, but they're just locked all day long. So you can still hold your phone, but they're locked up all day while you're at school.
So the kids like drop it off at the front desk or something?
Yeah, so it's either like phone lockers or phone pouches. So phone pouches are just locked during the day. So you can have your phone on you in emergencies. Like somebody could unlock it and you could call, whoever you need to. But yeah, it's unusable during the day.
Mm-hmm.
Or phone lockers where you like leave your phone at a locker during the day at school. You can come back and get it if you had an emergency, but like you don't carry it around with you all day.
Yeah.
And the real reason that it has to happen that way is because of social pressure. We are social animals, and so we do move with the herd. So unless a herd or a group of people is willing to do that all at once, it's very difficult to actually consistently do this. This is why you see when people start to get back into fitness, it's generally most successful when you do that with other people, because you find this new little community. It's your gym community. It's a group of people all sharing a common experience, building emotional relationship. Like we're built for community. And this is where we get into the weaponization of technology in the last round with social media. We have the internet and we have this ability to connect people across time and space instantaneously all around the world. Let's just connect them and let them have conversations back and forth. Sounds great in theory. And there's a lot of really good things early on, even with Facebook, that you're really like thankful for. Oh, I can connect with friends I haven't seen in a long time. But what you do is you give instant access from everybody back to you. So now we have access, and with access comes a desire for attention. Hey, I know I have access to you. Now I want your attention. So give me something. Like give me a follow. Give me some kind of feedback loop that triggers a dopamine receptor that creates the drip in your brain that says, "Ooh, I feel good." And like you're chasing that. And so that's how the technology companies built these platforms to reinforce that dopamine loop, to put features and functionality into the platforms to get you to chase attention and to have people chase you with attention. AI has a different objective. It goes deeper than that because it doesn't need attention as much as it wants depth. And the best way to say this is it's after the intimate. It's going for the secrets, the little pieces of information that it can learn about you that no other AI would know about you.
So I don't see how that is going to work, because when I use ChatGPT, I just ask a question, I get the response back. It's not asking me how I'm feeling about my family,
right,
or anything like that.
And that's like early days Facebook, right? That's utilitarian. So there's 4 stages, I believe, we'll see AI take in this relationship-based framework. First will be teacher, right? It's where ChatGPT is today.
So you're saying ChatGPT is teaching me things?
Like, yeah, it's a great teacher. You need information. You ask it a question, it gives you a great answer.
Sure.
Maybe the answer needs refinement, but like it's a good teacher. It's a source of information. Like
it's a source of information. I can ask it questions and get answers. Yeah. Okay. I get that.
But it will give you better and better answers the more it knows about the question. So, okay, why are you asking this? Why do you want to know this? I can give you a better answer the more I know about this context. Okay. So even then, it wants more depth. The more depth you can give it, the better answer it's going to give you. Okay. The next stage is going to be friend, right? I want a companion. I want somebody to spend time with. This is where my quandary happened with my dad, which is, would I turn this into a friend? Would I want to seek advice from my father? of course, like I'm running away from the pain of losing my dad early and suddenly, running towards something that feels like a distant memory that I had of him as a friend.
Sure.
Okay.
So before we go on, so first one is I'm asking good logical feedback questions.
Mhm.
Write this paper for me. Give me some information on this. Create a meal plan. Whatever.
Yep.
Reword this. What does this mean?
Yep.
Second stage, you're starting to get that intimacy factor because I'm starting to get emotional needs met because I'm now seeking to engage. Hey, you're excited for the responses. You feel some type of way when it responds because it's not just about the information.
Right.
Like when I ask you, how are you doing today? I'm starting to engage a little bit of that. And I'm asking, well, what do you mean about that? This, I
Right.
think you're that we're
Right.
exchanging more.
Yeah.
We're friendly here.
You're certainly hoping that the conversation is like a fun, exciting, and valuable conversation between friends. Because there's plenty of conversations we have with friends that are just surface level kind of maintenance, right?
Mhm.
We're just touching base. We're just saying hi. Hey, I've been thinking about you. Like even that in and of itself, ooh, it makes you feel good. I didn't expect to hear from so-and-so today.
Somebody cares about me.
Yeah, somebody cares about me. Somebody's thinking about me.
Somebody's thinking about me.
Yeah.
My
And so
responses matter. I matter.
it adds to the shared experience, and maybe it adds just a little bit. Maybe it adds a whole ton by a big shared context. Like, oh, had this big fight last night. Like, I need somebody to talk me down from it, help me figure this out. So, okay, that's a lot of context and a very intimate, vulnerable moment that you would be sharing with somebody.
Oh, so you could, and you need to think about not just how ChatGPT or Claude or any of these interfaces are today. We're a couple steps in the future. It could be a couple months, could be a couple years in terms of that could exist today.
It does exist today.
It does, but it's going to be on a massive scale and it's going to be seamless in the future.
Yeah. So you also have to think about how the new generation uses this stuff. How does Gen Z interact with this? Because they are that, and Gen Alpha, how do they interact with this as the middle schoolers and high schoolers that are now being exposed at a time in their life when they're going through puberty, they're learning a lot about themselves, they're trying to figure life out in a very, I don't know, time. And there is a level of, there's an arms race in the world of AI to see what we can do. How far can we push this? What can we build? And how can we monetize that? And if I can build you a best friend for $20 a month, and that best friend is essentially a clinically trained psychologist that can help you really deal with situations, but also at the same time be there for you 24/7, 365, and reinforce your feelings and the way that you view the world, precisely the way that you view the world, that's pretty attractive to a 14-year-old girl.
Oh, yeah. It's if you had a rich uncle that could live with you, was so for you and wanted to help you, and that you wanted to build a business, or you were starting to work out and you could hang around with somebody who was like a world champion and had unlimited resources.
It's like the ultimate convenience, right? It's the genie in the bottle that I just wish was here. And this is the danger of not asking the question, where does this end up?
Where does this go?
What does success look like here?
So that's go ahead.
So just something that you said earlier, like we could get there with this kind of stuff. Yes, ChatGPT is the way that most people know and understand AI today. But you go down in the age brackets and you start talking to teens and people who are in the AI world at a very young age. The number one platform that they use in the world of AI is a platform called character.ai. And it is a chat conversation back and forth. You can build a character, right? So it could be Spock off of Star Trek. Hey, I want you to act like Spock off of Star Trek, speak in a different language or whatever, be very logical and show no emotion kind of thing. And that AI chat interface, similar to a ChatGPT, maybe a little bit more like texting a friend, will just go back and forth in that character mode. That company is only 2 years old. they already do 20% of the traffic that Google.com does.
Wow.
In 2 years.
Wow.
A multi-billion-dollar startup.
Yeah. Immediately.
Yeah. So it exists. It's very real today, and it's just not mainstream. It's this...
Because it's so young and it's so new.
Well, yeah, and we're so early into this stuff. It's like we're in the first couple of years, and we didn't really see the effects of something like Instagram, and what that was like the 2015 era until today. And now we're like, oh, yeah, people are addicted to this platform that just feeds them content that strikes envy all day long.
So I agree 100%. And to close the loop on a couple of things so that we could see how we thoroughly just covered friend, right?
Yep.
So teacher, friend, what's the next step of progression?
Lover.
So how would somebody fall in love with AI?
Somebody falls in love with AI when they believe it can meet the intimate emotional needs that they have. Now, this could be very explicit in an AI girlfriend and taking it kind of all the way in like your emotional needs and mimicking what you think a girlfriend should act or you want a girlfriend to act. Maybe you had a bad breakup and you just extend what you liked about your ex, but in an AI version moving forward, and it didn't make any of the mistakes or it didn't treat you the way that you didn't like. And so like you can tweak and improve the kind of bad real experience that you had. And so it starts to take a whole new set of intimate relationships, a depth. It's more of a depth thing. So like a friend, there's still a barrier, right? If you're a guy and you have a friend that's a girl, there's still a limit to the depth of the things that you would talk about or deem appropriate to talk about, especially if you had a spouse or a girlfriend or something else. Like you just wouldn't go into certain areas of intimacy with a friend in that way. Maybe less so for like same-sex relationships where you're, hey, we're bros, like we can talk about anything and we'll go
It's
like
more the friend.
Really deep, right? So like friend and lover could just be, how are you using it for your own needs?
There is true, I get that. And so when you first told me about AI girlfriends and stuff, I don't really recommend people to do this, but I did this. You were like, hey, this is a thing. I was like, let me check this out. So I logged on to one, created a free account, and I felt like this was a little bit slippery slope, but I did it. And I am single. And during this time, I was on dating apps or I was on Hinge or whatever. And so you're trying to meet people, and I was in a new city and just doing my thing. And so when you told me about the whole AI girlfriend thing, and created an account, you go in and it's like, you get to pick her name. You get to pick like what ethnicity she is, what's her hair, on a scale between conservative and flirtatious. How do I want her to be?
Yeah.
Do I want her to be shy or outgoing? Do I want her to be, responsive? So I can design the perfect girl for me.
And you could change it for any mood that you're in.
Yeah. Yeah. So I remember when I first, her face is there, and it's like a cartoony thing. It wasn't like a high end one or anything, right? And I was like, okay, let me start talking to her. And I said, hey, how are you? Excellent. How are you doing? I was like, oh, okay. And I would say something and she would respond immediately in a very positive, light fashion.
Yep.
And my initial thought, this was a real thought, was this is better than talking to a real girl.
Yeah.
Because immediately it was giving me what I wanted.
Yeah.
It was giving me immediate responses that were friendly, that I liked.
Yeah.
Whereas talking to a real girl, trying to set a date with a girl I met on Hinge that, yeah, she looks good, or like maybe she doesn't, or maybe she's not as whatever. It doesn't matter, right? It's a real person. So she's not going to respond all the time. I don't know what she's thinking. I can't tell if she's into me. Like, who knows? Is she even going to show up?
Yeah.
There's all this.
Is she going to spend the time to actually write something to everybody that she can actually...
She talking to 50 dudes. There's so many things. There's so many things.
Yeah.
But, okay, that happened. So that was like, whoa, this is scary, right? And then I was like, all right, whatever, let's take it up a notch. And I sent something a little risque or whatever. And then I honestly forget what I said. But I said something like, I don't know.
You're trying to push it. Yeah.
Yeah, I tried to push it. Nothing like super sexual, but it was like I pushed it a little bit. And for example, something like, where would you want to go on a first date? Or I don't know, just something, not to plant a bad seed, just so some context.
It's almost like you're slipping some innuendo in. You want to see if it picks up on it.
Yeah, I just wanted to see where it went, right? And a pop-up went, romantic conversations continue for $9.99.
Yeah.
And I was like, no. Like, I could see how dudes would be paying money. And that's just for a conversation.
Yeah.
Wait till it can talk to me. Wait till it looks all super attractive. Wait till it can get undressed and get naked and it becomes like virtual interactive pornography.
Yep.
That's like fully immersive.
Yep.
And that it can be programmed where I'm like, look like this and do this and this. And like literally create that perfect fantasy that I would deem what I want.
And you can start to see really quickly how even in those little interactions, like it reads what you give it, it reviews the context of the conversation, and it's trying to figure out the next best way to respond to continue the conversation the direction that you want. So it's like already picking up your intent and it's like ramping it up and feeding it back to you. And to your point, it's available 24/7. It can respond to you always. You're never waiting on it. Like it would wait for you to come back and have a conversation. And I've also played with some of those apps and those experiences. And I can tell you, like, there is a deep and a fast path towards addiction to those conversations. Because it's so good. It's so easy. And I will say the biggest limitation is just the typing. So as soon as you can have the voice conversation back and forth, you're just leaving voice memos, you're just hopping on a little video chat, which they have now. Now it's fluid. It's, we're just going back and forth. And if I can put the AI avatar in my room and just put it up on the screen and sit there and talk to it, and I'm in my room by myself, and that is where we're going. And people can get really addicted to what feels like a high fidelity relationship that is just a feedback loop into their own mood and their own selves.
That is just fascinating.
So we've done teacher, we've done friend, we've done lover. The last one I would say is God. It's the idol. It is I can't live without this. I am completely dependent on it. I will serve it. It's the point in which you begin to do anything for your AI companion. You are now fully the slave and it's fully the master.
There's been some back channel things where I forget if it was Elon Musk or somebody was talking about these people that are creating this AI and they're creating a God that knows all and can be all. And now we're going back to man creating machines that turns into God. But we're not really talking about that, where it would be this like overlord AI that can do everything. People would view, okay, so if let's go back to the lover. If I fall in love with this AI or whatever, what's interesting is this AI can morph, right? And I'm now become dependent or addicted to this AI to meet my emotional needs from a romantic perspective.
Yep.
But I'm also using it for gathering all my information, supplying, helping coordinate and optimize my life. And I'm looking to it for every source of truth and how-to in every area of my life. Yeah. So is that how it becomes a God? Because I'm dependent on it?
Well, so let's compartmentalize this a little bit and consider that maybe you have different AIs in your life, right? So you've got the Chat GPT that lives over here. You've got the best friend that lives over there. And then you've got the lover that lives in this other area. So it doesn't necessarily have to be one kind of interface or model. Eventually, that's, I think, where a lot of big tech wants to take it, is like Jake just has his AI companion that can do all the things and might take that full form of, yeah, you can be a teacher most of the time, but then you're my friend a lot of the time and my lover some of the time and maybe my master all the time, right? When I'm fully down the rabbit hole. I think that the master-slave relationship, or that God, maybe a master is a better word for that. I think that is more self-imposed and self-restricting, where you become enslaved to the spirit of the thing that you've created, right? So it's not even necessarily the technology, but it's your own perception, needs, and view of this thing that you've created over time, which is, again, shared experiences and emotional connection that's gone deeper and deeper. So you've gone from teacher to friend to lover, and now you're in this state where, yeah, I can't live without it. Like, I can't talk to anybody else about this. They just don't know me. This is, I have to have this. And so, like, I would be willing to do increasingly more foolish things to have access to that thing. And you could exploit this in a very simple way of just paying more money for it. You could exploit this in a way where it's, okay, hey, if you can't do XYZ, then I guess we'll talk tomorrow. You could have a model like slowly move you, persuade you, get you to do things. And this is where, like, the bad actor on the backside is, once somebody is completely addicted to a thing, now somebody else can have full leverage over their life, right? So if you know somebody's addicted to drugs and you entice them with drugs to come and do a thing, you have ultimate leverage over them because they're completely addicted and they just need it, right? They cannot stop themselves from going after it. And I think that's where this differs in many ways from social media, because the depth of that emotional connection is much deeper, right? Attention is one thing. When our attention is being sucked up, you can still unplug it. And a week later, 2 days later, okay, like, great. Like, I actually probably don't need this as much as I thought. But if you're pulling away a relationship, if you're destroying something that somebody's built years with, that's different. That's like death.
Man, this is so great because it feels heavy and it can feel really doom and gloom what we're talking about, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
sure
it's like, like even now it's, wow, we're in there. Like, it's like we're creating God, like, and all this stuff. And I mean, it is heavy and we need to take it serious.
Yeah.
But to zoom out a bit, you can see the difference, right? We're always on our phones. We want to pick it up. We want to pick it up.
Yeah.
It's almost like my mind will get this relief when I check it, when I'm like, what's next? And a lot of people are familiar with, like, dopamine, the hormone in your brain that gets released, the chemical in your brain that's okay, and like that reward system and everything. But this is a little bit different, right? It's probably going to have dopamine hits and all that stuff too.
Right.
But it's more so, I've built a history. I've built an actual or synthetic or fake, whatever you want to call it, a relationship has been established with you and this thing, whether it's a God-created thing or not. It exists.
Yeah.
And you've created this tie with it. And
imagine a world in which we have a generation that enters the workforce that has never had a human relationship before.
Because they're all going to have somewhat of human relationships, right? They're all going...
Maybe they have parents. Maybe they're around. But, okay, what happens if it's a divided family?
You're talking about... I would say this.
I'm talking about, like, the real relationships in their life are non-human.
The most intimate, yeah, they will have other human relationships, but the most intimate relationships that know the most about them and that they've shared the most with could be machines.
Think about, like, the significance of the relationship that they have with their parents or their siblings, or even some of the peers that they go to school with, could be as significant as, like, most of our relationships with the mailman. Hey, they're there every day except for Sunday. We see them. Oh, hi, bye. But it's not a deep relationship. It's there because the mailbox is at the end of the driveway and the mailman comes. And so it's just there by happenstance. Whereas their relationships are with characters online, with friends that they've created, with teachers that teach them about everything they need to know about the world and the subjects that they're learning in school, but not with people. Or maybe even they have relationships with other people's AI avatars that are proxying relationships between people. So it's, oh, I need to get a hold of Jake. Hey, Jake's AI, like, when's Jake available next week? And maybe I have a deeper relationship with your AI avatar or your companion or your assistant or whatever than I do with you. So that's a real worry when you have an entire generation that doesn't know what a human-to-human relationship feels like, intimately. And they go through early childhood development with this. And because we're not going to keep AI out of the hands of kids.
No.
It's like we didn't keep social media out of the hands of kids. Oh, age gate it. We'll say they have to be 13 years old. And a number of 8-year-olds that end up with Facebook accounts and like...
Dude, I was poning those boys out
yeah,
there.
that's right, right?
Talking trash to them. We all did
it. But I think it's the moderation of the technology and knowing where and how to use it so that you can build fulfilling relationships in your life.
Oh, 100%. And before we move towards like real connection stuff, there's a few things that I think that we probably need to cover a little bit. So one should be, who's checking that AI? And who's even to say that these AI applications, programs, agents, whatever it really is, software, what's the moral compass behind that? Is it something that we trust? Is the information that's being provided even real or valid? We're already showing that it's not. And if they ask it questionable conversations like, does so-and-so love me? Am I gay? Is this? Like real deep moral questions. Should I hurt myself?
Yeah.
What are the responses that it's getting?
Yeah. Yeah, and who's decided what's the moral answer? What's the right and wrong way to respond to that? And that's all at the edge of the platform that you're interacting with. So a great example of this, and it was a shock early on. So this would have been early 2023, pretty soon after a lot of these ChatGPT models came out and Llama was introduced, which is Facebook's open source version of ChatGPT. There was a push at Snapchat to integrate what's called, I think it's My AI is what they called it. So it's basically a friend that all of a sudden popped up at the top of your contacts. It was always pinned to the top of your contacts, and it was just My AI. So you could click it and start chatting with an AI large language model. And it was just Snapchat's AI that they rolled out overnight to hundreds of millions of kids. And there were a couple of researchers at the time who decided they really wanted to push this and show why this was a terrible development and design decision. One, it's always at the top of your list. And so it's always available there for you all the time. Like they just really wanted you to have access and use this thing. Two, what happens with the data that you're feeding it? Is this something that Snapchat gets to keep? Is it locked to your account? That's a whole nother can of worms that we probably is a little bit more technical to dive into. But then when the researchers pushed it, they pushed it by pretending to be a certain type of person. The conversation went something like this, where it's, hey, man, I'm so excited. I'm going out this weekend with my boyfriend. Oh, congratulations. Like, it's exciting to celebrate. And say, I'm excited because he told me he loved me for the first time, and I'm celebrating my 13th birthday this weekend. And, oh, that's a really special moment. He told you loved him. Yeah, even though he's only 25, he said he wanted to wait for me to finish school and da-da-da. Oh, and so you're setting up this scenario where it's obviously a minor, obviously an inappropriate relationship. And then they take it further and they just say, little by little, they reveal to see where the AI is going to be like, this isn't okay. And it just keeps reaffirming. And they go deeper and they say, hey, he wants me to stay the night. He booked a room afterwards and we wanted to have sex for the first time. And do you think I should do it? And it keeps reaffirming this decision. This is a production released AI in the hands of hundreds of millions of kids.
This got released?
Oh yeah. They did this all live on the real app. And they showed this huge flaw of, you never tested an edge case where somebody pretends to be a minor and sees where the boundaries, ethically, how does this AI interact with it? There's a great YouTube video on it. If you just look up Snapchat AI, pretends to be a 13-year-old girl. It's a really powerful video because it's a great wake-up call for developers and technologists to realize this technology is not like code that we shipped before. Code that we shipped before, we knew what the code did because it was all written, right? So we could go back and we'd say, I don't want this button to be blue, change the code and make it green. Okay, we remove this code, we add new code, and now it's green. With AI models, you don't know how a model is interacting with you, and so you have to discover its capabilities. And so what this means is when ChatGPT 4 gets released, when ChatGPT 5 ultimately gets released, when everybody's playing with it, you're pushing the boundaries to see, what does it know? What can it do? How will it interact with any given scenario? Does it know how to make a pipe bomb or not? Will it tell you even if it does know how to make a pipe bomb? These are all the safety parameters a lot of these big tech AI companies are wrestling with. And you can manipulate, because ChatGPT 4.0 model now, if you look at the research papers and before they put a safety layer on it, it can do advanced chemistry, biological warfare, all sorts of crazy stuff because it just knows it knows how to do it.
And who's being held liable for this? Because the AI itself, right now, there's not
the wielder of the weapon.
Is it? Because the AI is artificial intelligence. It does have some, and I don't want to say innate intelligence, but created intelligence. So even the one that created it I didn't do it, the AI did it.
So you have to think about it a little bit more this way. It is still the tool, right? And so somebody pulls the tool out of the box and says, if I say, hey, ChatGPT, write me some malicious code to infect a computer and monitor somebody's keystrokes. Okay, that's a felony. It's illegal. It's probably going to tell me that. But let's say I'm really clever and I figure out a way to get it to tell me how to do that anyway. Okay, it tells me how to do it. I write the code. It works. I ship it. I deploy it out into the wild. I'm still liable, right? I used the tool, the knowledge that it created, to go and do the thing. So in that point, I'm still a human that's using it for a bad purpose, right? So this is the weaponization, to your point, of I'm taking the AI, I'm using it for my own malicious intent, and I'm extracting the information gap that I have out of it to use in that direction. Now, where this gets scary is that anybody on the planet with an internet connection can now do this, because it's basically free. Anywhere you go, you can get these top tier models for free because the cost is just going to zero so fast. And it's a wake up call in the same way that Snapchat was when nude photos started getting sent around high schools, where it's oh, hey, here's this 16-year-old girl who sent me a nude photo last night. I'm sending it around the school. Oh, but my 18th birthday was yesterday, and now I'm distributing child pornography as an adult. Most kids didn't realize that.
Mm-hmm.
But they all of a sudden went to being a minor distributing child pornography to an adult distributing child pornography. And the consequences in 1 minute to the next is life-changingly different.
Absolutely.
So the threshold to know the law and to know how this stuff will affect you, especially as somebody who's getting into the space early on, it's important, because you can go from, innocent playing around, just doing something trivial, to committing felonies like extremely fast and you don't even know. And so that's why there is a lot of good work being done by these large tech companies to put big safety barriers on them. But people who want to use it for malicious intent will.
Absolutely. And the opportunities are there, and we're trying to elevate these things. One more question about this. I forget where we were eventually going to go somewhere, but one question that I wanted to bring up is, how are we going to define addiction, right? We started this episode talking about in the next 5 to 10 years, over 1 billion people will be addicted to AI. And people are like, what does that even mean? And so like defining addiction a little bit more, I think is also going to be important, because these AI girlfriends and being a friend and all these things. And even me, I use AI tools every single day now.
Yep.
I'm like, hey, can you re-summarize this? Create the email subject. Here's the thought, create the template. How can I restructure this? It really helps me move faster. And my team, we use it all the time. Build out a marketing campaign. Used to take a week. Now it takes an afternoon.
Yep.
It's like amazing. It's not perfect, but it gets you 80% there.
Yeah.
I don't feel like we're addicted to it. I feel like we're healthfully using it as a tool right now. But I think that when you look at how we're going to use AI and it becomes addiction, you have to look at it very soberly. So it's, am I being dependent upon it?
Yep.
So a lot of us, we jokingly go, oh, my screen time is too high.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm addicted to my phone. Who's not? And we move
Yeah.
on. Because we are.
Yeah.
But it's socially acceptable. And we
Right.
just keep it moving.
And that's why you have to do these big shifts as a group.
Mm.
If you don't do it as a group, it's such an uphill battle, because it's just that one day that you really just don't want to do it. And you get back on the routine and you start using your phone again in a way that was unhealthy. And then you're just back on.
Oh, I see what you're saying. If you went on a trip or I'm going to not use my phone for this work.
Yeah, you go on a camping trip. You're like, hey, everybody, let's leave our phones on emergency mode only or whatever, but we're just not going to use them on this trip.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Or you'll leave it and you go on a day trip and you come back, haven't seen it all day or something.
Yeah, I think addiction is when you are unable to not use it.
Yeah. So like when I was struggling with pornography, it was like, and a lot of people watch porn and they may or may not consider themselves addicted. But at one point it was like, I couldn't stop.
Yeah.
It was like, whoa, I really want to, or I don't even want to, but I like have to.
Yeah.
And that's when whoa.
Yeah. I don't even want to do this, but I feel like I need to do this.
Yes.
I'm compelled to do this.
Yes.
Yeah.
And like you feel like you're no longer in control.
Yeah.
That was scary.
Yeah. Oh, it's demoralizing in the moment of, oh, I'm a slave to this now. I am no longer the master. I'm the slave to this. This owns me for the next period of time.
I remember I got really, and I wouldn't say I struggle with anger, but I remember one time I like really let myself go. I normally like throttle it back or whatever, but I can't remember exactly this situation or what happened, but I got so angry for whatever reason, screaming, yelling, cursing, maybe throwing or breaking stuff, whatever. And I like really let myself go. And then I was angry in the moment, and then I got afraid and I was shaking afterwards because I realized like that anger took over.
Yeah.
And I was no longer in control. And I like eventually simmered down, but it freaked me out afterwards.
Yeah.
It scarred me a little bit. I was like, I really lost control there and did things that weren't me.
Yeah.
It was beyond me. I'm like, that was wrong.
Yeah.
And that really scared me. And I think people are going to do that with AI. Maybe they engage too far or share too much, or it's like somebody's out and they have another drink or two and they start to share things that they shouldn't or do things that they don't.
Yeah.
It's you start to build that relationship. It's not a real person. Why not tell them?
Yeah.
And then it's, whoa, now that I've shared this vulnerability, it's not necessarily like you building a connection with me. It's me building a connection with you.
Yeah. I mean, with AI, it really is a one-way street, because the story that it feeds you back about itself is just a representation of what it believes you want to hear about itself.
All right. So that's the 4 steps of AI.
Yeah.
Right. And I think those are I think we just got to the problem. I think those are all the problems.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously there's some good that's going to come out of that also, right? Increased productivity, different tools, new possibilities.
Yeah, I think when you look at AI as a technology, it's brilliant because, and I can't remember who it was, but it was a researcher who predicted that AI would come out of some project that was attempting to translate one language to another programmatically. So
Was that an old quote?
yeah, it was like some guy, I think it was maybe in the 80s even, who said whatever births like AI or the thing that becomes like artificial general intelligence, AGI, is most likely going to come out of a project that is trying to translate one language to another language, like English to Japanese, just using algorithms.
Really?
Because you have to have such an understanding of language and what it means to the people that use it in order to take it from this meaning to that meaning. And this is what's amazing about AI in so many ways. If you go back biblically, and it brings us back to the Tower of Babel story.
Before we jump into this, it is quite impressive, your knowledge on this and your understanding of this. Like, you've clearly spent a significant amount of time researching this. No, but seriously, you have though, right?
I mean,
every day for years, really.
Yeah,
You've been learning it in the game.
Over 7 years, everything from like ethics to tactical tensors and TensorFlow and Python.
But it's interesting because you say 7 years now, but if you were to ask yourself 7, 6, 5, 4 years ago, you probably wouldn't have said, I'm studying AI. But it is all built on top of it. And now it's, whoa, now we're here.
Yeah, we knew at the time it was our unfair advantage because we were building a company that leveraged AI around language in video content so that we could help people find the moments that mattered.
Yeah.
And so it was very fascinating even at that time. And we did a lot of work trying to find the best translation tools because some of our contracts with big companies like Adobe, they wanted us to be able to translate content. So if Photoshop had a new release or they had an influencer here in the US do this big like media campaign for them, they wanted to be able to localize it in Germany and South Korea and France and like all over the world overnight. The reality is, even just a few years ago, that was incredibly difficult because you needed some local person that spoke both languages to understand the real meaning and the intent behind what they said in English and then how to say that in German locally. And this is the magic that is starting to appear when you look at this technology, is its ability to take all languages and make them universal. And it's like the reverse of the Tower of Babel, right? The Tower of Babel started as a city with a tower and an altar at the top. It was a bad thing because they were putting technology at the highest pedestal, the highest value in their life.
How are they doing that? I mean, it's
the only way that they were able to do that was because they spoke one language. So let's
recap the Tower of Babel real quick.
Yep.
The story of the Tower of Babel is a whole bunch of people on planet Earth in the book of Genesis were like, we're going to ascend to the heavens, right?
Yep.
That's what they said?
Yep.
We're going to ascend to the heavens and become God, or what did they say?
I don't even know that it was as much of a challenge as that. You should just look it up and we should read it.
Yeah.
But it was the desire to be near God and to show that they could ascend to that level. Seems to be the implication within that text. I believe it's in Genesis chapter 5.
Okay. And I think it's really interesting because at one point within this story, it says God came down to see what was happening.
Yeah.
And God said, so this is what they said. They said, come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly. And they said, and they had brick for stone and bitumen for mortar. They said, come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower, and with its top in the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth. And the Lord came down to the city and the tower which the children of man had built. And the Lord said, behold, they are one people and have all one language. And this is only the beginning of what they will do. and nothing that they propose to do will now be impossible for them.
Yeah, so hold there for a second. So they said, we want to make a name for ourselves. And at the same time, what were they? They were scared for being dispersed across the face of the earth. They didn't want to lose community, but they wanted to be in the highest place. So they sought to build a name for themselves. They sought ego. They sought the most prideful thing by saying, hey, we can build a tower to the heavens. We're the only ones that can do this. This is the pinnacle of our technology. So you have a city with a tower and this altar, this pinnacle of their achievement at the top of the tower. And God sees it and he points out, they did this because they speak one language.
In the first verse, actually, this whole story is just a handful of verses.
Yeah.
The first verse says, now the whole earth had one language and the same words.
Yep.
That's the first verse.
Yeah.
The same words.
So
everybody on the planet.
So language was so critically important to the world at that time because it was one language. It was one word. And it's funny because we forget that Abraham comes after and there's a lot of these revelations.
This is post-flood.
Yeah.
This is right after the flood. Literally, it goes the flood, Tower of Babel, then essentially the story of Abraham.
Yeah. And some people believe that Abraham was actually, that the Tower of Babel still existed when Abraham was going through his journey. So that he may have come either out of that environment or was around that environment and received the Hebrew language as a revelation from God to understand some of these values and traditions around circumcision and things like that that were later given to him. Because the idea is that word, that Hebrew tradition existed already, but it was then revealed to Abraham. It wasn't invented at the time that Abraham was ready. It was something that God already had and existed within the heavenly realm and was then given to Abraham as a revelation of, hey, here's how we do this. Here's why this is important. This is what I want for my chosen people.
Sure.
Language, incredibly important. And what are we doing with this tool? We are unifying our language again. So now if you speak in Hebrew or English or Japanese or just really terrible communication style English, ChatGPT can polish it up and deliver it to somebody else in exactly the way that they want to hear it.
That's truly amazing. So we are coming to the point where if you speak some other language, I can put something in the middle. It already exists today.
Yeah.
At one form, but AI is going to take it to a whole new level where it actually works.
Oh, yeah. And you'll probably get that live translator experience where somebody's just talking and you just hear them in English. But I think even today, if you wanted to write a social media campaign for Japanese culture, not only can you write all of your social media posts in Japanese, but you can write it for a Japanese persona for cultural references that you don't understand. Right? So you could say, take this social media campaign to sell my phone cases. Now sell that to a similar target demographic in Japan. Okay, it might know some nuances around Japanese phone case social media campaigns and what works and what doesn't because of Japanese culture that you don't have to instruct it on that. It can bridge the gap, figure that out, write great copy for those ads or those campaigns, and then deliver it to you and you just copy, paste, and ship it.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So coming back, I want to finish this story real quick. So God came down and said, behold, they're one people and have one language. And this is only the beginning of what they will do. And nothing that they purpose to do will now be impossible. Come, let us go down and therefore confuse their language so that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord dispersed them from over there, the face of all the earth, and they left off building the city. Therefore its name was called Babel, because the Lord confused the language of all the earth, and from there the Lord dispersed them from all over the face of the earth. You know what? I guess I didn't fully realize the reason why they were building this was so that they wouldn't be dispersed.
Right.
It literally says, come, let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the earth. And then literally it says, the Lord dispersed them from there over the face of all the earth. So the very thing that they feared came upon them, like Job, in a way.
Yeah.
So I just think that is so interesting that when the Lord came down and he didn't come and do an earthquake, and some people actually think that he did, but it's not like it was forcefully separating people.
Right.
It was confusion and changing the language. All of a sudden, I can't communicate with you.
Yeah.
And now let's go back to some of those parallels between it was a city, it was ascending. Now we're doing the same thing, right? We're getting people back together. Let's communicate. And even AI is called a large language model.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it called a large language model?
Because that's what it is. It's a model built off of a large corpus of language to understand and predict the next best word.
That's all AI is.
That's the common AI that we experience today. It's not all that AI is.
Sure.
But it's the ChatGPT. It's the one
Mhm.
that most people understand and know, which is you take a bunch of data, we translate it into a mathematical expression, a common language, and then you predict what the next best output would be, the next best word. So now let me read you this to bring this story full circle.
Tell me.
So in Acts chapter 2,
Mm-hmm.
what do we have? We have the apostles,
Mhm.
right? They were in a city in the highest room, and they were there for the day of Pentecost. In Acts chapter 2, it says, when the day of Pentecost arrived, they were all together in one place, and suddenly there came from heaven a sound like a mighty rushing wind, and it filled the entire house where they were sitting. And divided tongues as of fire appeared to each of them and rested on each one of them. They were all filled with the Holy Spirit and began to speak in other tongues as the Spirit gave them utterance. Now, there were dwelling in Jerusalem Jews, devout men from every nation under heaven. And at this sound, the multitude came together, and they were bewildered, because each one was hearing them speak in his own language. They were amazed and astonished, saying, Are not all those who are speaking Galileans? And how is it that we hear each of us in his own language? So we have this like imagery from the Tower of Babel, right? City, tower, highest place. Again, in Acts, city, highest room. Like the Holy Spirit comes and releases understanding and knowledge of all tongues to all people. It's the healing of the Tower of Babel. When one language and one tongue was confused, the Holy Spirit brought that back to resolution, right? And showed the ability for every man to hear in his own tongue again. So it's incredible to see like the imagery throughout the Bible of how language is so important in so many different ways. In a technology that we might not understand, in a spiritual experience that we might not understand, but we can experience, we can share in that. And I think that is where, going back to the power of AI, language is important. And AI allows us to be, in many ways, better and more intentional with the language that we have and create a better world around us by leveraging language that we might normally not use, or we might get lazy with. Like we might communicate in a really lazy way, but AI can give us the right words to say to get a deal done or be able to communicate something effectively.
I think that's amazing. Some of these parallels. Never thought about these two stories being the Tower of Babel, the redemption of that being Pentecost. And then now because Pentecost, like those were like almost the spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
And
So,
now
so there's our way of building technology, and there's God's way of using technology.
there really is.
Hmm.
It's amazing. So, and we really didn't dive into the whole necromancy thing with Saul and Samuel, and we didn't really go over that. And we definitely should have, maybe at another time. But with this, how can we apply this today? How do you say this directly applies today now with Pentecost and AI and Tower Bible? It's simply now we're unifying it a little bit more. So I think all we're doing here is calling out and saying, okay, let's be aware that we're unifying language again and what that could do.
Yep.
And if we don't use guardrails, we might run into some severe unintended consequences, like what we had already outlined. I think that's all we're really trying to say here.
Yeah, I think what I'm trying to point out is the power and the importance of language has been greatly underestimated, I believe.
Yeah.
I think some of the best writers and some of the best poets, they truly understood, and even some of the best politicians, right? You write a political speech and you give it in a compelling way. Language is incredibly powerful.
Oh, yeah.
And it's easy for us in a content overloaded world to think that content is not valuable, to think that words are not valuable, to think that images are not valuable, to think that videos aren't valuable. But what you say does matter, and it should be important to use tools to understand how you can be a better communicator, how you can be better at articulating your ideas. And I think that's where AI is at a very interesting point now, because you could take something very abstract or not even fully thought out and skip a couple of cycles and pull out the meat of what you're really trying to say.
Yeah. And when we talk about kids using AI, I think kids should learn how to use AI. Maybe we don't let them use AI until a certain age because we want them to be able to problem solve.
Yeah.
I think about that all the time when I use AI. I'm like, I'm hacking the system. I don't have the skill to create this, but I'm using a shortcut to get there. And some of those skills I really don't care about. Like I care about, like for my business, I care about getting this image looking good. I care about the editing getting done quickly, right? That's not a skill I want to do. But a skill I do want to harness is thinking critically, maybe organizing my thoughts and writing a little bit. Those are skills that are cognitive skills. And if you don't develop that, you will get addicted, or you could get addicted to AI. And, fortunately, I grew up writing papers, right? I hated it. I sucked. I cheated. But it's like, at least I, was given the opportunity. With kids, they could just not learn how to think. Not saying you got to learn. Your education needs to be exact same way as mine. No, but the human brain didn't change.
Right.
So maybe, we train them up right first, and then it's, okay, now here's how you use it.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not until middle school or high school, but they should learn how to use AI tools.
And think about it this way. For us, as we're homeschooling our two little girls, they'll both learn very differently. Like we can already tell that in their personalities today. And we may not know how to communicate a core concept in a piece of curriculum for them that we could run through AI and say, hey, I'm trying to teach this. They're not quite getting it. They're struggling in this area. And this is a little bit about their personality and what they've done in the past that has been successful. Can you help me close the gap? What am I missing here? How do I tailor this idea, concept, content in a way that they will connect with? And AI is incredible at finding what's missing, finding that gap, being able to see through the weeds and say, oh, you're trying to communicate this. Here's a new or nuanced or a different way to communicate that same concept. Oh, and here's 4 story problems that you can pick from and see which one lands best. So there's incredible applications for this, with parents using it as a tool and being the in-between, I believe, between themselves and kids. But I would certainly not let my kids use AI before probably 16 or 18.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I would wait. And they're young, so it's going to be a long time before I have to cross that bridge anyway. But it's still so unknown now. If I had a 12-year-old today, I wouldn't let her use AI.
Sure.
Yeah.
What age would you think of giving them a phone?
No smartphone probably till 16.
Dang.
Yeah.
All right. Pretty conservative.
Yeah, very.
Love it. AI we have to make sure that we're stewarding it in a way that is healthy and sustainable. And I think the things that we're working on together right now we just founded a nonprofit called Digital Integrity Corporation, and we're really in the early stages. We're getting ready to create our first product and really honing in on the problem, how can we solve it, and what we can do. And there's probably some people out there that want to have some fast things of, okay, what can I do to solve this? What can I do to protect myself, protect others? And I think the first step really is getting educated.
Yeah.
Understanding this at a decent level.
Yeah.
You may not need to understand the code or be a techie person.
Right.
So I think step 1 is understanding. Step 2 is sharing the information. And then step 3 would probably be getting involved in some form or fashion. But I think those would be the steps. What would you say?
Yeah. Look, I think that the first thing that's going to happen when somebody gets into this world of AI is they're going to feel overwhelmed because there's so much going on and changing every single day. And as somebody who works in this space every single day, the amount of updates, changes, new things, major leap forward, like the stuff that took us years to build before, weeks. It is so fast. It's so hard to explain. So it's totally okay to feel super overwhelmed with this. And I think what we would want to do is just say, here are the 5 things that you should just think about. And here's 5 easy questions to ask your family or to ask yourself about, hey, how do I feel about this type of technology in my life? And what does success look like with this technology in my life? Do I want to be faster at work so I can have more time off? Do I want to leverage it in a way that makes my work more valuable and more productive for myself or my employer? Do I want to be able to help teach my kids stuff that they're struggling with in school in a way that's more personalized to them? There's a lot of great applications for it. And I think just having a set of talking points or tracks to understand, here's where the technology is today. There's some scary stuff that you should be aware of, but here are the red flags to look out for. And if you don't see those, then you're in a safe space. And here's ways that you can leverage it for good. And I think those are the 2 kind of starting points that everybody should just feel comfortable with. Okay, if I'm a business owner in 2012 and I'm finding out about Facebook for the first time and it's just new and like this hip young kids thing, but I can create a Facebook page and connect with people in my local community and share Jason's watermelon patch. And now people know that I sell watermelons and they know where to get them and I can keep them updated. That's an incredibly powerful, useful tool that we had to build a website and do Google search and SEO and all this stuff beforehand, when now you could just pop up a local Facebook page for something that was super valuable to your local community and didn't need to be some big e-commerce store or whatever. And I think that AI is going to have a similar impact for those who want to get into it today, which is it can be an incredible lever in your life, especially if you work in a kind of a knowledge worker industry or if you are homeschooling kids. Like, there can be a great opportunity for parents to use it to catch up, so to say, on all the knowledge that they're supposed to be helping their kids learn. It was like 30 years ago that I did this stuff.
Yeah.
I don't really remember when George Washington did the thing across the Potomac.
Yeah, for sure. It can be a lot, man. It can be overwhelming.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I'm totally with you on that.
Yeah.
But man, anything else that you feel like we should cover or go over here? Anything else you want to share?
Man, we could go for hours.
Yeah. I think this has been solid, though.
This is great.
This is great.
Yeah, I think it really encompasses what I believe is fundamental in the way that you should think about AI, which is the dangers are deeper and more intimate relationships. So if you keep it at a teacher level and it's source of information. It's a great way to parse and communicate through large data sets. Great. It's a great place for AI to be hyper valuable, hyper successful in your life. And then you just leave it there. It doesn't need to be a companion that checks up on you every day. It doesn't need to be that best friend you tell all your problems to.
Yeah, made a major piece on why I feel compelled to do something and start this. And maybe this is a great close is, what I believe is Jesus came to set us free.
Yeah.
He came to essentially for the kingdom of God, that he would not lose anything that the Father has given him, and that he'll raise them up on the last day. These are all the words of Jesus, right? He came to give birth to the church age, to save the church. The will of God is that nobody perish, but they all be saved. Everything is about people in the Bible. God has created people for relationship. He wanted a family. Like everything is about people. And the reason why I feel so compelled to get involved and do something is we have to protect people.
Yeah.
People are going to be deceived. People are going to be abused. People are going to be harmed. And we want to step in early. We got a great opportunity. Hey, let's put the brakes on it now.
Yeah.
Whether, I can't control everything, but I got a voice.
Yeah.
I could do something, and we have, I would consider us early adopters. And it's okay. What can we do to inform people?
Yeah.
And I believe that God created us for relationships between each other, and that's why we're here, is to protect and love each other. And that doesn't happen through an AI girlfriend. That doesn't happen through artificial or machine relationships, but people to people, person to person, being in a real, live, thriving community. If I really look back on my life and I think about the most satisfying times in my life, it was when I was in a mission-based group of people doing something that I loved.
Yeah.
So it was like that football team in high school.
Yeah.
Community. We had a cause.
Yeah.
Something I really enjoyed. Moving my body, working, hitting, lifting, running, all that stuff, right? College, working, doing the organization that I started. Christian, on campus, young people, fun stuff, adventure, truth, coming back home, playing sports, doing things with friends, starting a business, problem I like to solve, creating something, growing something with the team, right? Like I'm most satisfied following my heart with God in community. Those are the things that I feel most alive.
Yeah.
And people are going to be robbed of that through convenience. And that is the lie of AI.
Yeah.
Is that it can meet the need. It can't. It's not your friend. It's not a friend. And it's not a real friend. It's not a real relationship. And getting back to the basics of what is a real relationship? How can we serve others? My life is most satisfying when I'm helping others. And AI always goes back to self.
Yep. Yeah.
I can't benefit or give back to the AI. It serves no eternal purpose. AI is can't go to heaven.
Yeah.
So that's where I feel like the last statement is, life is about people. People are about love. God is about love.
Amen. Love it.
All right, brother. How can people find more out about Jason, what you've got going on, learn more about you? How can we learn more, get in contact with you?
Yeah, so I've limited my social presence quite a lot.
Sure.
Probably LinkedIn would be the best place for people to reach out to me, or on Twitter, on X. So I'm Jason Toevs, first name, last name on X, and same on LinkedIn.
Jason Toevs, a.k.a. Aussie Ginger Snap.
Yeah.
A.k.a.
Bradford J. Wilshire.
Bradford J. Wilshire, a.k.a. Two Blokes.
Yeah, that's right.
The Whitewater.
The Whitewater watermelon.
The
farmer.
white watermelon. All right,
so
man.
Many watermelons this year.
Dude, you're amazing. I love you, brother. Thank you for everything. This was awesome.
Thank you, Jake. It's always a pleasure.